Well, the powers announced today, I think the Prime Minister said he wanted to give the military easier access to deal with terrorist attacks, shoot-to-kill policies. I'm all in favour of, taking out terrorists if they're in the midst of a terrorist attack. If innocent people are being threatened, I have no problem with law enforcement officials, counter-terrorism officials killing them. No problem at all. I'm a little bit uncomfortable about the idea of deploying the military in domestic security situations. In a modern democracy, I believe the military should be used for external defence, and the police do a very good job domestically. In the UK, where there was a horrific terrorist attack recently at London Bridge, within 8 minutes of the phone call being made to the emergency services, the police arrived on the scene and shot dead the 3 attackers. An amazing feat by British police, and hats off to them. The gentleman mentioned the Lint Cafe. My understanding is even the state coroner, when he produced his report earlier this year, said, look, the military could have worked better with the police, but it wasn't really a situation that required the military to go in. And as I say, I think the police should be the lead on this. I think the Prime Minister did say that today. I'm uncomfortable at the idea of deploying the military as part of an anti-terror force domestically. The French have done it since the Paris attacks. Amnesty International came out with a report a few weeks ago about some of the excesses and human rights issues to do with that. And separately, I do worry about, I know we're going to talk about this later, I bet, but, this idea of kind of the fear of terrorism and living in a perpetual state of fear.
We will come
But just one point on that in relation to this. Yep. Watching the Prime Minister today at those barracks, surrounded, flanked by 6 Special Forces soldiers with masks on their faces. I mean, if that's not using the military for political reasons, if that's not politicising the military, I don't know what is. I found that a little bit uncomfortable for the Prime Minister to turn up with 6 commanders. They didn't need to be in that press conference with him. And there's a little bit too much use of the military there to make political points.
Terry Butler.
Yes, there's been a long bipartisan approach to not using the military for campaigning purposes, and it is important that we do continue to respect that. The fact is that people in the military are putting their lives on the line every day and deserve our respect and gratitude, and not to be turned into not to be part of a backdrop of campaigning. Having said that, I have to say I was in committee hearings all day. I didn't actually get a chance to watch the press conference itself. I only saw the stills of it. But I know that there's a bit of discomfort being expressed in the community about the way that appeared. What
about the actual use of the military in terrorist situations, which is what's being canvassed here, obviously? I mean, the police, the Lint Cafe, did not do their job at the final when they went into the cafe well enough to sustain an argument that the police should do this. That's what's being suggested.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to make any criticism of the New South Wales Police. Again, police officers...
But very specifically, does Labor support the idea of using the military, if necessary, in domestic terrorist incidents?
Yeah. So obviously this has been announced today. As I say, I didn't get a chance to see the press conference, but we're very, very far from seeing any sort of legislative change to consider. The principle is one that has obviously been canvassed before, and Bill, I think, has an open mind in terms of looking at suggestions to make Australia safer. We do try to take a bipartisan approach in relation to national security where possible. Having said that, that does not mean uncritical acceptance. And if you look at our record on national security, on every national security bill that's been before Labor, we have sought to make improvements and to really work hard to protect civil and political liberties in making sure that what you don't end up with is a sort of authoritarian, overly authoritarian response to the fear of terrorism, which of course just makes the country less free, which is counterproductive if the entire point of what you're doing is to ensure greater freedom for citizens through freedom from violence.
OK, let's hear from Matt Canavan.
Well, thanks, thanks, Tony. Just returning to Demjin's original question, which was really about why they didn't already have these powers. This is an environment where we've got to continually be vigilant in improving the framework we have to respond to these events. And I think we have a very effective framework, law enforcement system, intelligence gathering system, that thankfully has avoided a lot of threats. About 12 activities have been disrupted in the past 3 years by those authorities. But we've always got to be becoming more vigilant and not be complacent. And this particular change has been a recommendation coming out of the Lint Cafe siege. And look, I take the points that Mehdi's making about historical use or the purposes of different agencies, but I also, in this environment, seriously take the advice of the law enforcement officials about what they need to respond to what are very, very challenging threats.
And what about the point about using the military as a backdrop to a political announcement, particularly masked men?
Well, like Terry, I was busy today. I didn't see the press conference itself, but I think that seems a little bit over the top. I mean, this wasn't a campaign announcement or anything like that. It's quite often that we, when the military involved in activities or what have you, we involve them because they're an important part of our community. I've got a large training activities with the American Army at the moment in central Queensland, and the politicians often go up and talk to them and thank them for the work they do. And I think that's what the Prime Minister was doing today, thanking our special armed forces and our armed forces for what they do and what they sacrifice to protect us all.
All right, John, is the military used in this way in Canada, do you know?
Well, the military is used in a lot of different ways in Canada. As you know, we have a long-standing tradition of peacekeeping, and of which, in fact, amount to a kind of quasi-policing in other jurisdictions. But I think Mehdi's point's a crucial one, not only symbolically but practically. Police officers are trained not only to exert force, but to police, to make peace as peace officers. And soldiers generally aren't. They're trained in a different way to do a different kind of job. So it's both symbolically and practically very dangerous to mix the two.
Well, I mean, in this case, it seems specifically designed to get people who are used to killing other people, whereas the police, in the circumstances of Lit, were not. So the idea is you find people who can do that job best.
Well, it seems if I look south of our Canadian border, there are plenty of police officers who are good at killing people.